Hello everyone. Tonight we stepped back in time and landed in front of an ancient tavern with the full moon casting its silvery glow over the stone doorway. You feel the cold air of the medieval night wrapping itself around your shoulders. Like an ancient cloak, the wind whispering secrets from ages past. At first, you probably won't survive this night. Literally, of course, but with all this impressive atmosphere, your heart might be beating a little too loud. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. So, where are you watching from and what time is it in your city? Post in the comments. Now, dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan to create that soft hum in the background, and let us begin this evening's journey together. You stand there, beside a heavy oak door studded with rusty nails, and reach for the bolt. The cold metal is a delightful contrast to the heat emanating from the tavern. A sharp creak echoes as the wood gives way, and for a moment you are torn between wanting to get inside and wanting to remain in the safety of the modern world. The short, dark corridor exudes a mixed odor of straw, damp leather, and that curious touch of worn stucco. Your senses sharpen as if you were a memory hunter, trying to absorb every nuance. The lighting, almost dim, allows you to make out moving figures, study tables, wooden benches shorn by time, and tapestries creaking in every breeze that passes through the high window. As you move forward, the cold stone floor creaks beneath your feet, reminding you that, in the past, taverns were essential meeting points on pilgrimage routes, a consecrated historical fact that reinforces the social importance of these places. As your eyes adjust, an unusual curiosity arises. It is said that, in some taverns in the Middle Ages, patrons would pay their entrance fee with a handful of coins or even a rooster feather, according to less conventional chronicles. You shake your head, thinking about the bizarre logic of accepting feathers as payment. Perhaps the owner used them to stuff improvised mattresses? Historians still debate whether this practice was more common in rural areas or just a legend spread to attract curious travelers. Taking another step forward, you feel the contrast between the chilly weather outside and the cozy warmth that now envelopes the main hall. The smell of fresh beer, roasted malt, and spices wafts through the air, enveloping you like a warm embrace. You inhale deeply, trying to capture each aroma. Cloves, cumin, and a subtle hint of oakwood smoke. It's almost like breathing in history, and with it a hint of subtle sarcasm. Nothing like a brew to spice up the sense of reality. The tavern, lit by wrought iron chandeliers, features dancing shadows that ride across the stone walls. You make your way to an empty table, but you have to dodge a group of merchants exchanging coins and tales of far-off travels. One of them, as robust as a walking barrel, puts out a booming laugh that makes the mugs clink. Another light joke pops into your head. Be careful not to wake the dragon. Snoring in the back, you sit down and the bench creaks under your weight as if complaining about being used by someone outside the local customers. As you adjust your hood and gaze at the embers in a large central stove, you embrace the notion that you are in a haven where simply being present is an adventure. It's a well-established historical fact, medieval taverns served not only drinks, but also simple meals like meat pies or rustic bread, often shared by neighbors and travelers, creating bonds between strangers. You almost expect someone to offer you a piece of warm bread. And of course, another inside joke arises. Do I get a pot of butter if I find out who's running this tavern with such charm? You raise your mug, make a silent toast to whoever built those stones, and for a moment you wonder, what if some traveler from 800 years ago was watching you now? That thought gives him a pleasant shiver, a reminder of how elastic time is in places like this. A fringe curiosity complements the moment. In certain taverns, it was believed that a black cat wandering around guaranteed good luck and protected against nightmares. Just imagine if you came across one of those felines in the dark alley outside. As your breathing calms and your senses take in every detail, you become aware of the soft murmur of voices telling stories of kings, battles, and secret meat recipes. And of course, there's always that point of academic debate. historians still debate whether taverns were, in fact, centers of political collusion or simple refuges for those seeking a breath of peace after exhausting journeys. You close your eyes for a moment, let the medieval atmosphere invade your waking dreams, and feel that, for a brief moment, you belong to that ancient universe. Bring back that feeling as the full moon continues to watch silently outside, and get ready because there is still much to explore on this night, full of secrets and stone whispers. As you settle into the rustic bench, the intense aroma of freshly tapped beer fills your nostrils in warm waves, mixed with spicy notes of cumin and a hint of smoke that seems to smile at you. You take a deep breath and feel the hot particles dancing in the air, as if inviting you to taste every nuance. You could almost mistake the smell of roasted malt for dark chocolate, but don't get too close or you won't lick a table. In the Middle Ages, beer was a staple food. It is estimated that farm workers consumed up to 3 liters a day, not only for the fun of it, but for the safety of drinking something cleaner than stagnant water. This explains why Benedictine monks around the 8th century became master brewers, perfecting fermentation techniques that we now consider standard. Historians still debate whether the monastic influence on beer production was motivated by devotion or a pure desire to create the sacred drink of the time. After all, miracles happen in many ways, right? You tilt your head and notice how the smoke from the clay oven, where oak chunks are burned, evokes memories of modern barbecues but with a rustic charm. The curious thing here is that some medieval brewers added a pinch of child urine to the work to adjust the pH and speed up fermentation. It's disgusting, I know, but it works according to Les. Welcoming Chronicles. If you doubt it, just look at the records of brewers' guilds, which date back to the 13th century and even regulated the way to tread the malt. Be careful not to twist your ankle like an absent-minded apprentice. A wooden mod is placed in front of you with a thud etched by time. You feel the cold metal reinforcing the idea of authenticity, and you quickly take a generous sip. The dark liquid coats your tongue, awakening earthy notes and a light sweetness that makes your eyelashes flutter with pleasure. Just kidding, your eyelashes don't flutter, but your eyebrow raises slightly, as if questioning your modern life choices in comparison to this ancient nectar. You remember the hood that kept your face protected outside, and now you shake your head to ward off the smell. This causes a few breadcrumbs to fall onto your lap. Nothing that can't be wiped away with a flick of the wrist, but the medieval fork would have been just a dull knife, so you're probably better off using your hands. Inside joke, it's nothing that a nice, damn handkerchief won't fix tomorrow. When you look around, you notice a group of farmers exchanging knowing glances, each sip celebrated as if it were the last. One of them comments that cumin, more expensive than merchant salt on the Silk Road, was so valuable that it was used as currency in some villages. Historians still debate whether the real value of cumin rivaled gold in certain transactions, but let's face it, if you were to pay your bills with spice, you'd expect a spectacular flavor on your plate. Your throat feels warm, and for a moment, you gain the courage to challenge your modern taste. Why be paying this fairy tale bill if they shower me with cumin coins? You think, eliciting another silent laugh from yourself. Then, he notices a classical musician with a worn-out lute walking towards the nearest light source to observe the surroundings, as if seeking inspiration for the next song. Another joke, if he composes something, it will certainly be a hit innkeeper's popcorn. The steam from your second sip forms a cloud before your eyes, and you almost see scenes from ancient battles, with flags waving and armies marching. This sensation is reinforced by the historical fact that medieval taverns also served as informal recruitment points for mercenaries and local militias, offering a mug of beer to anyone who chose to wield a sword. You wondered if a flyer-style advertisement would be as effective in recruiting gamers into virtual guilds today. The smoke, the smell of fermenting grains, and the murmur of conversation create an almost hypnotic atmosphere, and you almost whisper to your imaginary companion, "This is better than any modern beer festival." The social proof works faster than the notifications on your phone, which there would shine like an object from another world. You are enchanted by the contrast between that charming simplicity and the technological complexity you have left behind. Suddenly, a burly traveler spills some of his beer on the stone floor, sending drops of beer glistening in the flickering glow of the candles. A plop sound makes you chuckle, reminding you that even in the 1400s, Murphy's Law held sway. If something can go wrong, it will. Another sip is inevitable. You raise your mug and toast to this universality of chaos. And of course, the inside joke emerges. Cheers to all the inevitable disasters. As the sweet taste invades your palate, you reflect that in the medieval West, drinking was so commonplace that the first taverns were regulated by the crown, paying taxes on the volume consumed, a foreshadowing of the taxes on alcoholic beverages that you would pay centuries later at the corner bar in your town. Historians still debate whether these taxes were intended to control consumption or simply to fill the royal coffers in times of war. With each breath, you feel the room slowly spin, but not from drunkenness. It's the feeling of belonging to an ancient community, where every sip of beer was part of a centuries-old ritual. You imagine the monks silently observing from behind thick curtains, noting how many liters were consumed in a month, perhaps planning secret recipes for the next barley harvest. And then, as you wipe away the foam that has run down your lip, you realize that metal mug contained more than just a brew. It held stories, wars, peace agreements, and perhaps even lost poems. You close your eyes for a moment, pay mental homage to all the master brewers of the past, and with one last sip, prepare to move on. You look up at the chandeliers hanging from the low ceiling and feel the flickering glow of the candles caress your face like warm lion's fingers. Each flame flickers, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls, transforming carvings into ghostly faces and making the room feel like a living theater. You notice the subtle heat emanating from the tallow candles, and you almost want to reach out and touch the flame, but be careful or you'll fry your hand like a medieval chicken nugget. This light show is no mere decoration. In the Middle Ages, beeswax was so valuable that abbots and monasteries forbade its use to light taverns. Instead, common folk made do with less refined tallow candles, which gave off a pungent odor and often attracted unwanted flies. Historians still debate whether the scarcity of beeswax led to the decline in quality candles during times of plague, or whether it was a ploy by the church to control light consumption. After all, God likes to constant resources too. As your eyes follow the flickering flames, you notice tiny drops of fat dripping onto the iron base of the candlestick, making dark dots on a rough surface. A silent heartbeat of melted fat that accompanies your slow, steady, almost hypnotic heartbeat. The interesting thing here is that some villagers believed that if a candle melted without a flickering flame, someone in the community was up to some evil spell, which, let's face it, sounds like the medieval version of being suspicious of your neighbor who never cleans out the leaves in the gutter. As you adjust your hood and shield yourself from the heat, you can smell the strong scent of tallow mixed with the faint aroma of beeswax. If you're lucky, you might even detect a hint of lavender, in case some alchemist monk had decided to experiment with fragrances. You take a deep breath and, with gentle sarcasm, think nothing like an animal fat spa to make your skin soft. Look around and notice how the lighting affects each face. The burly traveler from before now looks carved from marble, while the floating smoke petals create an ethereal curtain. You wonder if, on your modern Instagram, this would make a good vintage dark mode filter. Inside joke, if I post this video today, even a bored monk would like it. The depth of the shadows also reveals small imperfections in the walls, cracks filled with dried mud, fingerprints from generations who passed through there. A well-established historical fact is that taverns near villages often used the tunnels of underground sewers to discharge ash and food waste, a practice that reportedly gave rise to rats as large as cats. Historians still debate whether these tunnels were intentional, designed to make cleaning easier, or an engineering accident that became tradition. As your senses adjust, you realize that the shifting light also influences people's moods. Every laugh seems more irreverent, every whisper more conspiratorial. You lean forward, as if you can hear hidden thoughts through the shadows, and whisper to yourself, "Welcome to the show of darkness and animal fat." Another inside joke, because laughing in the dark is practically a medieval sport. Suddenly, a candle catches a draft and lets out a soft pop, making you jump. Nothing like an instant fright to wake up. A natural sleeping pill that your body had already begun to produce. The distant clink of mugs and the gentle rustle of rustic clothes seem like a symphony in the early hours of the morning. You remember the creaky stool you sat on and feel a shiver. Could the meddlesome human drummer be trying to make you jump again? The flames also reveal dust suspended in the air, reflecting off of it like trapped fireflies. You almost try to count how many there are, but you soon realize that counting particles won't get you a YouTube like. Just kidding. If a medieval inventor had gadgets, he would have made a dust lanometer to measure air purity. With a smooth motion, you take a sip from a mug still resting on the table, the drink shimmering in the dim light. The surface of the mead reflects the flickering flames, creating a liquid mirror that seems alive. The sweet, slightly tart taste spreads across your mouth, and a shadow of a smile forms on your lips. Meanwhile, a senile old man approaches, begging for permission with a long wave. He carries his own candelabra, carved with dragon designs, a family heirloom. He says, historians still debate whether these pieces were produced by itinerant artisans or by centralized monastic workshops, but the old man assures us that this comes from his lineage, passed down from father to son as a sacred inheritance. A curious fringe fact complements the narrative. Some tavern owners used to sprinkle candle ashes at the entrance to ward off wandering spirits. Will you remember this legitimate spiritual spam when you get home? You give the old man space, feeling the weight of the story in every breath. Your hood brushes lightly against his arm, and a speck of wax sticks to his face, leaving an imperceptible mark, enough to make a good futuristic fisherman's tale, like the traveler who returned from a world where candle wax was the new gold. As the old man's candle flame joins the others, creating a cluster of luminous points, you notice how the darkness curves around the light, as if it were protecting some secret. And, of course, another joke emerges. I'm sure that if we lit 1,000 candles, we would still find the simplest way to get lost in the dark. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the dance of light and shadow lull you. The silent symphony of crackling wax, muffled whispers, and the clanging of metal creates an ASMR rhythm that invites a tremendous calm. It's as if the candles are whispering ancient secrets just for you, inviting you to delve deeper into the mystery. And as the flickering flame continues its ancient choreography, you notice a point of academic debate echoing in the silence. Historians still debate whether the art of lighting interior spaces evolved organically from practical necessity, or whether there was an aesthetic intent from the beginning. You smile beneath your hood, acknowledging that in that carefully orchestrated gloom, each question hangs like a cloud of melted wax. Imperfect, but fascinating. The tallest flame flickers, and your heart warms, not only from the fire, but from the feeling of being immersed in a world where light is as precious as life itself. Your eyes slowly open, and you know you are ready to move forward, guided by the flames that reveal more than stone walls. They show the unseen, stories and whispers that shaped this place. You glance up slightly as a booming laugh rips through the air, carrying through the room like a soft thunderclap. The hearty laughter comes from a nearby table, where 3 peasants are sharing a giant mug of dark ale and seemingly competing to come up with the most absurd joke. You feel each rumble vibrate through the floorboards, as if the floor itself is conspiring to infect your mood. Collective laughter was an essential part of medieval tavern life. Records from the 14th century indicate that taverns could easily seat 20 or more patrons at communal tables, encouraging conversation and story telling among complete strangers. This sociability was so valued that rulers issued decrees to keep these houses open as places for community gathering. Historians still debate whether the social Incentive was more about bringing people together in times of instability or simply maintaining public order under the guise of controlled entertainment. You feel the warmth of each laugh, and for a moment, imagine a scene in slow motion. Mugs rising, bodies leaning back and mouths open in genuine joy. It's almost impossible not to respond. You let out a smile that shakes your hood, reminding you of the clink of an ancient coin. Inside joke, I bet if this were a medieval meme, there would be runes instead of hashtags. As you watch, you'll notice an unusual curiosity. In some taverns, there are people who would buy a round of drinks just to liven up the atmosphere, a ritual known as Joy Boat, in which a mysterious person would arrive, make an impromptu joke, and disappear before anyone could ask for the bill. The origins of this custom are as nebulous as the flames that now dance over the tables, but it's said that it was a way of spreading good vibes without any direct connection to the guild or the crowd. You decide to join the chorus, letting out a small, contained chuckle that gradually becomes a genuine laugh. The sound is different from your modern laugh, deeper, almost guttural. It makes you laugh again in a vicious cycle. A medieval humor, light joke. Nothing like a laugh pre-filtered by time to be completely spoiler-free. Beside you, a group of urban merchants exchange provocations about who saw the biggest animal on the road. One of them claims to have seen a wild boar the size of a quad, while another swears it was just a pig full of lice. You almost want to intervene, but decide to stay and watch, analyzing the rhythm of the chatter and how it mixes with the clinking of the mugs. The cacophony forms a concert of voices that envelopes you like a thick woolen blanket, inviting you to relax even more. Between one laugh and another, you notice a curious detail. In some traveling taverns, troubadours would bring potions of psychotropic plants to spice up their stories and provoke exaggerated reactions in the audience. It is said that these elixirs were made with poppy flowers and fennel in enigmatic proportions. Historians still debate whether these potions were used as harmless entertainment or if they were part of darker rituals to control the population. You lean forward, reach for your mug, and take a slow sip, watching his features soften in the flickering light. The beer gives you the courage to strike up a conversation with a stranger in a black cloak, and soon you're swapping anecdotes about ghosts that haunt country roads. This sharing of confidences is directly linked to the tradition of confession nights in taverns, where travelers would reveal their fears and secrets in shared safety. Meanwhile, an inside joke pops into your head. Did the ghost bring his own hat? You let out an involuntary chuckle, attracting curious glances and, unintentionally, infecting those nearby. Then, voices rise in a new chorus of laughter, and you feel the joyful support of the crowd, a reminder of how humor has always been the best bridge between strangers. At this point, a troubadour improvises a mocking verse about a baron who mistook his own shadow for an enemy, drawing laughs that are worth collecting. You wonder what this scene would look like filmed today. Imagine medieval TikTok going viral with this bit. Another light joke, because laughing in the dark has timeless echoes. With each laugh, you also notice the muffled sound of creaking floorboards. Each table transmits different vibrations, like strings from an invisible instrument. It makes you wonder how acoustics affected the experience. A well-established historical fact is that sophisticated taverns in the late Middle Ages were designed with wooden reeds and mud in the corners to reduce excessive echo. While you enjoy the symphony of voices, another point of debate arises. Historians still debate whether taverns evolved from large monastic halls or whether they emerged independently as lay meeting spaces with no direct connection to religious entities. This doubt hangs in the air like the smoke from torches, invisible but always present. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the waves of laughter wash away any modern tension that might have remained. The human warmth and the clink of mugs create an almost hypnotic rhythm, and you feel that each laugh carries a charge of empathy, a link between you and all the anonymous people who came before you to hear these same sounds. And as the chorus of laughter persists, you realize how the simple act of laughter connects past and present. You take a final sip from your mug, feel the familiar taste of medieval night, and with a sigh of satisfaction, prepare for the next act of this journey. You lean forward as a sickly servant sets a gleaming metal tankard on the creaking table, the sharp clink making your heart skip a beat, as if each note is a warm welcome to your sense of adventure. As you touch the cool glass, you feel the grooves worn by generations of drinkers, a texture that tells stories without words. That's when your first sip of mead arrives, sweet, spicy, and with a slight tingle that warms your chest as warmly as a woolen cloak on a cold day. Mead, made from fermented honey and pure water from local springs, was already revered by the Germanic peoples in the 6th century as the drink of the gods, often offered at rituals and agricultural festivals. This sacred legacy spanned centuries until it became the secret ingredient in monastic recipe tablets. Historians still debate whether medieval mead was more appreciated by the noble classes or whether, in fact, its home production was so widespread among peasants that it competed in popularity with beer in certain regions. You taste the initial sweetness and notice a slight hint of acidity, as if the variation in wildflower nectar adds unique nuances to each vintage. As you swirl the mug, you notice a golden glow on the inner walls, mesmerizing as candlesticks, reflecting dragon light. And, sure enough, your inside joke begins. If I tell you this liquid was once considered an aphrodisiac, will you start flirting with the little wooden piece next to me? Between sips, you recall the hood that swung over your shoulder a few minutes ago, imagining the heat that must have emanated from beneath it, perhaps the medieval equivalent of wearing a woolen cap in the middle of summer. Light joke. There's nothing like a little fermented honey to dislodge the ideas and speed up the sweat. An unusual fact, some itinerant alchemists added nettle leaves and linden blossoms to mead to supposedly increase its energy content, creating a variant called Watchman's Mead that was said to keep watchmen awake during long nighttime vigils. You shake your head, imagining medieval guards wondering if this elixir worked any better than modern coffee, and at the same time you smile at the thought that if it did, medieval Starbucks would have lines wrapping around the cobblestone street. The slightly spicy sensation of the mead awakens your senses, bringing to mind the smell of wax and smoke that still lingers in the air, mixed with the fruity and floral aroma rising from a mug. You look up at the nearest candle and notice how the flame reflects in small drops of condensation on the rim of the metal, a spectacle of light reminiscent of those fireflies suspended in the shadows. Inside joke, if I were a firefly right now, I would envy this festival of reflections. As you savor your second sip, you recall the tavern as a military and commercial meeting place, sorcerers and passing knights used to trade in contraband saffron and silk over mugs of mead, forging alliances in secret meetings under the cover of laughter and music. This time-honored historical fact shows that taverns were much more than bars. They were centers of parallel power where pacts were forged that could change the fate of kingdoms. You wonder if, behind that oak counter, there's an artifact hidden, perhaps a rooster feather used as a payment token in some obscure transaction. The idea yields yet another light-hearted joke. Who would have thought that? Instead of Bitcoin, in the Middle Ages, everything was paid for in feathers. At least they were light to carry. The mead warms your body and calms your mind, but not so much that you fail to notice the subtle herbal notes. An almost minty scent invades your nostrils, and you imagine a mystical flower growing on the edge of the stone path. The velvety texture of the liquid contrasts with the roughness of the board where the mug rests, creating a dance of sensations that almost seems like an initiation ritual. Suddenly, the clink of your glass echoes again as you raise it in a silent toast to whoever invented mead. You lock eyes with an old man with a slanted eyebrow. Arched and wordless, they share the understanding that something magical happens when honey meets fermentation. Historians still debate whether mead-making techniques were the result of a gradual evolution of folk wisdom or the result of secrets kept by religious orders, a mystery as thick as the golden nectar you hold in your hand. With each sip, you feel your surroundings come closer, the low voices, the shuffling of feet on the wooden floor, and a distant whisper of clandestine conversations seem to compose a unique melody. You close your eyes and let the flavor transport your mind to pagan solstice celebrations, where leaves dance in circles and all sorts of stories are passed around flickering torches. Inside joke, if this were a solstice party, I bet there would be someone singing off-key. Medieval or modern, it doesn't change a thing. A burly adventurer next to you rolls his eyes when you take another sip, as if to say, "Save some for me, mate." You smile, tilt your mug slightly, and imagine what a mead-guzzling competition would be like, an endurance sport. You'd certainly lose, but would be fun to watch. The contrast between the initial cold of the metal and the internal heat of the liquid creates a sense of balance that calms your breathing. You flow with the moment, as if each beat of your heart aligns with the distant crackling of the fire. You open your eyes slowly and gaze at the room as if waking from a gentle dream, feeling the ancestral energy of so many generations who raised this same mob before you. Finally, you carefully place the glass on the table, almost whispering a silent thank you to the craftsman who forged that metal. The final clink resonates like an invitation to continue your journey, reminding you that there are still secrets hidden in the shadows, in the stone walls, and in the veiled voices that await your next step. You lean in to listen to the merchant in the shabby cloak who has just opened his mouth with an exaggerated gleam in his eyes, as if he were about to reveal the secret of an enchanted tapestry. He begins to tell you stories of knights errant, those who, without a fixed castle, wandered the muddy roads in search of glory or redemption. You feel the raw wood of the table under your forearm, the strong smell of sweat and leather mingling with the sweet scent of the mead that still sits in your tankard. His every word seems to echo off the beams of the ceiling, as if the walls pulled the memory of duels in the moonlight. In the Middle Ages, knights errant did exist. Documents from 12th century chivalric orders record that. Many left their homelands without patronage, relying solely on the hospitality of landlords and taverns. Along the way, these wandering warriors sold their services to lesser kings or wealthy merchants, offering protection or participation in tournaments that yielded gold and fame. Historians still debate whether these knights were motivated more by chivalric ideals, such as rescuing damsels in distress, or by mere opportunities for profit in times of political instability. As you listen, a shiver runs down your spine, imagining the screech of steel against steel and the echo of horse hooves on the gravel road. And inside, Joe plays in the back of your mind. At least, they didn't have to deal with medieval traffic jams, just drawbridge trolling. You can picture starving, knight arriving at the tavern at midnight, famished and exhausted, ready to trade his last crust of bread for a steaming mug. The merchant describes how these knights carried with them family relics, a scarred helmet, an engraved sword, and, curiously, a piece of parchment with verses from the troubadours who accompanied them. You take a deep breath, absorbing the vague energy of ancient poetry. A fringe curiosity here mentions that some knights kept dragon ashes, according to oral legend, as a talisman of courage, something you long to carry in your modern wallet, if there were one. The mere idea of having ashes of a mythical creature ignites a spark of wonder in your chest. As the merchant weaves his plot, you begin to see figures emerging from the gloom, elongated, shadows moving in time with invisible hooves. It's as if the entire hall has become a stage for nocturnal gatherings of warriors in shining armor, striking banners and exchanging vows of honor. You almost reach out to touch one of them, but remember that armor is stiff and heavy, not exactly the kind of welcoming shelter for a gentle touch. In your hand, the mug weighs more than before, perhaps influenced by the epic atmosphere. You crack another joke. Just imagine the back pain of someone who wore that armor 24/7. Nowadays, even a backpacking trip is a headache. The joke floats in the air, and you notice a traveler in the background, rolling his eyes, perhaps tired of so much medieval drama. As you imagine jousting tournaments, your mind wanders back to the hood you brought from the modern world, so light compared to the weight of a full helmet. You remember how cold it was, outside and how comforting the warmth of the tavern was, a reminder that, in those days, every inch of metal provided a nearly impenetrable barrier against a night's frost. A well-established historical fact holds that in cold climates, knights often slept in wool-lined blankets on their horses for lack of safe lodging. Meanwhile, the flames of the torches dance around them, casting reflections on the metalwork. The glint of a sword on a makeshift wall evokes memories of battles on marshy plains, where the mud stuck so tightly to the armor that every step was a marathon. Silent, you imagine the difficulty of lifting a muddy shield and, inadvertently, make a face that reveals your eyebrow. Game. Inside joke. If this were a medieval reality show, it would be heavy armor. Who survives? Soon the merchant mentions something about the vow of pilgrimage that some knights took, leaving homes and lands behind in search of absolution or adventure. You feel the emotional weight of this decision cross your chest, and the distant murmur of other patrons seems to compose a chorus of resigned voices. An additional fringe curiosity tells that, in certain regions, knights would deposit their spurs at the tavern door as a sign of arrival, expecting to be challenged to combat. A curious medieval touch here for duel. You take another sip of the mead, savoring the warmth that spreads through your body, as if each draught still contains traces of the divine nectar of the Germanic peoples. The subtle sweetness of the honey, contrasting with the slight bitterness, made your brain trigger memories of modern calories and celebrity diets. But let's face it, calories are calories, whether they're from mead or a green smoothie. Another whispered joke. Would a medieval influencer record stories of mead tasting? Imagine the before and after. The merchant leans forward to a high point in his narrative, describing how these knights formed brotherhoods with solemn oaths in the moonlight. You smell the thick scent of sweat and new leather as he speaks of muffled handshakes in makeshift chapels. The sense of sacredness mingles with the rusticity of the surroundings, a fascinating paradox that makes you frown in curiosity. Amid all this, a heated academic debate is raging. Historians still debate whether the knights-errant guilds were more spiritual in nature or whether they functioned as proto-criminal organizations, protecting spice smuggling routes. You smile wryly, thinking that smuggling was the Uber Eats of its day, except instead of sushi, it was saffron and silk. As the last flames flicker, you picture a young knight, a nervous novice, sliding his rusty soles across the threshold. You almost hear the muffled sound of a shield being slid against the wall, perfectly timed with the clink of your glass as you set it down on the table in a silent toast to these brave souls. The warmth of the mead mingles with the heat on your face, marked by the damp hood of anticipation and excitement. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the image of glittering harnesses and whispered oaths invade your waking dream. Then you take a deep breath and prepare to move forward, knowing that with each step into the hall, you're closer to the mysteries hidden in the shadows, and of course, to the next stories waiting to be unraveled. You notice the soft rhythm of lutes and flutes intensifying in a corner of the hall, and feel musical vibrations reverberating beneath your bare feet, or almost bare feet, since you insist on keeping your rusty medieval boots on, just for the sake of drama. The wandering musicians, in colorful hoods and patched clothes, pluck wooden strings and blow on reeds with hypnotic precision, creating a silent invitation for you to move your body to the ancient beat. As the melody grows, you feel the board beneath the bench vibrate, as if it were an extension of the instrument, and it is impossible to resist. Your legs begin to gently sway, one step at a time, as if learning a forgotten dance. You lean, your torso forward, following the rhythm that pulses in the air, and notice the gentle heat rising through your body, not only from the effort, but from the excitement of participating in something so spontaneous. An inside joke emerges. If this were modern 4-0, I bet they would call it Medieval 4-0 and make everyone wear capes. With a snap of your fingers, a makeshift partner, the burly farmer whose laughter echoed in the background, reaches out and pulls you into the circle of dancers. You chuckle, thinking that you never imagined trading the four walls of your living room for a muddy ballroom. But let's face it, the dance floor here has a raw charm that no contemporary club can match. Light joke, lucky they haven't invented TikTok yet. Or, I would go viral tripping on the stone floor. Historically, medieval taverns often hosted local festivities, especially on patron saints' days, when the community would gather to dance and celebrate after church services. These impromptu dances helped maintain ties between peasants and artisans and serve as a crucial meeting point in rural societies. Historians still debate whether these dances were more influenced by ancient pagan rhythms or adapted directly from communal church celebrations. As you pivot, following your right foot and then your left, careful not to crush your own toes, because rusty spurs hurt more than they look. You feel a rush of adrenaline as you realize that the damp ground helps cushion each step. A fringe curiosity reveals that some taverns sprinkled crushed bone powder onto the floorboards to improve the acoustics, and it is said to ward off evil spirits hiding in crevices. Think of it as a medieval sound trick, the most brutal version of rehearsal room powder. You watch the lanterns swing overhead, casting golden points of light that follow the dancers' spinning movements. The sound of laughter and tap dancing blends with the sound of the resonating strings, composing a communal symphony so immersive that it makes you question the endless playlists of modern apps. Inside joke, if I had a medieval Spotify, I would record this track as dancer do barrel spinning up. As you settle into the final step of a rustic square, you notice the colorful clothes billowing around you. Full skirts, patch cloaks, and woolen vests. Some of the dancers wear pointy hats adorned with rooster feathers. Remember that feather you thought was a legendary currency? Well, it's a popular fashion accessory. The rough texture of the fabrics and the smell of sweat mixed with the aroma of mead create a unique scent that only a medieval tavern could offer. Suddenly, the lewdness starts a faster variation, and his feet alternate with surprising speed. You feel your calf, muscles protesting, but you persist because the feeling of belonging to that circle is addictive. A joke comes up. Who would have thought that my gym workout would prepare me for a medieval dancing CrossFit? You laugh softly, assuring that, even without social media, your sense of humor is timeless. As the music slows down, you lean back to catch your breath and notice the audience around you clapping rhythmically, encouraging the next phase of the dance. The musicians exchange knowing glances and begin a flute and lute duet that seems to float in the air, inviting your soul to travel. A well-established historical fact points out that, in large medieval cities, musicians' guilds even charge symbolic fees to play in taverns, establishing an early network of informal copyrights. Historians still debate whether this precarious system of rewards was intended to protect musicians' craft or simply to ensure that taverns did not become centers of subversion. Since music was also a means of disseminating songs critical of power, you find yourself pondering the similarities to current debates about streaming and artist compensation, a clash of temporalities that makes your brain tingle with curiosity. As the lutenist strums a soft final note, your feet return to the ground, and you feel the weight of gravity pulling your body back to the physical reality of the tavern. The heat in your chest, however, remains a sign that a piece of that ancient dance has become embedded in your veins. You wipe the light sweat from your forehead with your sleeve and smile at the person next to you, proving that, even without a cell phone, it is possible to share an epic moment. A final blast of flute echoes through the hall, and you bow in reverence to the musicians, receiving warm applause from the surrounding group. Ben, you raise your hood and make a small bow. Don't be too modest after. Oh, you have just attended a ball that perhaps not even the most famous bard has seen so closely. Final inside joke. Ready for the medieval pro? All that's missing is the gown and wooden cap. You take a few steps back, your legs feeling shaky, and watch the circle of dancers resume their places around the tables. The sound returns to its usual murmur, and you notice that the room feels more welcoming, as if it had been blessed by that spontaneous celebration. With a satisfied sigh, you prepare to move on, eager for the next surprises. Hidden in the worn boards and the echo of ancient voices, you slip into the darkest corner of the room, where the candlelight barely reaches and stretch out against the cold stone wall. A barely audible whisper reaches your ears, sending a shiver down your spine, as if someone were repeating secrets veiled in ancient alcoves. In this dim environment, each word gains weight and mystery, and you lean forward slightly, try to catch the next fragment of conversation. Historians agree that medieval taverns were often home to secret meetings in dimly lit corners where disgruntled courtiers would plot rebellion or negotiate political intrigue. These clandestine gatherings were often used to plot against powerful lords or to share sensational rumors about potential contenders for the throne. You can smell the lingering scent of damp wool and candle smoke wafting through the humid air, and you can imagine how many plots have been hatched there amidst the shadows and furtive glances. As you approach, you hear two low voices discussing a dossier of confidential documents that they say prove a local baron has embezzled crown taxes. The first voice, a husky merchant's tone, questions the authenticity of the signatures, while the second, a strained whisper of a nobleman in disguise, asserts that royal blood often runs in advantageous ink. You pull your hood down further in a gesture of modern anonymity, thinking that if you had Instagram back then, you would have looked cool in secret influencer mode. An unusual curiosity. Fringe reports suggest that some conspirators use trained foxes to deliver stealthy notes through the smoke ducts between one fireplace and another, creating an unofficial postal service that eluded guards in the castle corridors. You imagine a small medieval fox with a backpack on its back, running through the smoke on secret trails, almost like a courier app before paved roads existed. Inside joke. If it were today, it would be called Fox Post and given a 5-star rating. You step back and feel a faint creaking of the floorboards, alerting the conspirators that prying eyes are nearby. The whispering turns to sudden silence, and you almost hold your breath, as if the air itself is complicit in some conspiracy. Tension pulses in every speck of dust floating in the dim light. A consecrated historical fact reinforces that, in periods of instability, the tavern functioned as an improvised forum for local power disputes, attracting messengers, spies, and even rebellious poets. As your ears adjust, you realize that the narrow walls concentrate the sound, making that whisper even more hypnotic. It's as if the stones of thousands of years hold echoes of betrayals and oaths of loyalty. At that moment, you feel the weight of the hood on your shoulders like a cloak of secret privileges, and a sarcastic smile forms on your lips. Nothing like a good royal drama to warm the night more than the fire in the fireplace. Suddenly, a third conspirator appears, more daring, offering a paper sealed with red wax. He says softly, "If you take this to the Abbey cleric, we guarantee impunity." You shudder to imagine the power of this secret alliance, but at the same time, you're amused by the idea of a medieval pay-by-pin drive of information. Light joke. Who would have thought that instead of pin drives, they would use seals to transfer gigabytes of intrigue? In the midst of this suspense, you notice the rough texture of the stones on the wall, marked by ancient inscriptions that, they say, are verses from a forgotten troubadour. An extra fringe curiosity tells us that, in forgotten corners of some taverns, bards engraved verses of protest against high taxes, creating small literary graffiti. You look at the wall, runes, and joke internally. If this were medieval email, it would go straight to spam, but I would love to see the inbox. As the voices return to a cautious murmur, you notice the scent of spilled wine in a nearby corner and the creak of a narrow staircase leading down to the basement. It is known that many conspirators had underground escape routes to escape guards. This well-established historical fact reveals that in walled cities, small service tunnels connected taverns to neighboring chapels, serving as secret routes for last-minute escapes. You feel a shiver of excitement when you imagine a real medieval tunnel of terror that led straight to the sacristy. The conspirators finally disperse, leaving you alone with the soft echo of their footsteps and the distant clink of mugs. Your heart still racing, you walk away slowly, whispering to yourself, mission nearly impossible completed. The moment takes your breath away, as if you had participated in an epic plot without a sword in hand. Final inside joke. Ready for the next episode of Tavern Intrigue. Late night marathon guaranteed. As you return to the center of the hall, the flickering light reveals attentive faces that notice your curious gaze. You let out a muffled sigh, return your hood to its normal position, and survey the crowd as if you had arrived from another world. At this moment, an unavoidable academic debate blossoms. Historians still debate whether these secret meetings were fueled by witchcraft or whether they were simply the inevitable byproduct of a fragmented feudal system. This uncertainty makes each shadow seem to carry a story of its own, ready to be whispered to whoever is paying attention. You take a deep breath, smelling the wood, hawks, and conspiratorial fever in the air, and realize that this moment of impromptu espionage was as addictive as any sip of mead. Now, with your ears still ringing from the suspense, and your heart warmed by adrenaline, you prepare to move forward into the night, knowing that behind every dark corner there are still voices whispering secrets that defy time. You are about to dive deeper into the human warmth when suddenly a metallic crash cuts through the general murmur. Two mugs collide with force, spraying foam everywhere. The loud clink makes heads snap up and eyes narrow as a stout peasant with a red-hot face stares down a slender merchant with a hard expression. Without warning, the fat man gave you a shove so hard that the tabletop creaks as if it were going to snap in half, and you feel the vibration of the impact shake the boards at your feet. In the Middle Ages, tavern brawls were so common that 15th century chroniclers estimated that up to 10% of visitors were involved in some kind of physical altercation, not just over drinking too much, but over wounded pride, old debts, or commonplace provocations. Historians still debate whether these disputes were ritualized to a certain extent, functioning as social escape valves, or whether they escalated in an unpredictable manner, putting the very survival of attendees and owners at risk. You take a step back, nearly slipping on a splash of meat on the floor, and notice the merchant pull back his fist, as if rehearsing a sure strike. Tension builds in the hot air, and the smoke floating above you seems to solidify into clouds of electricity. An inside joke slips through your mind, nothing like a medieval rock, paper, scissors to avoid permanent damage. As the two men exchange blows, the first a right hook that catches the peasant in the jaw, followed by a left hook that sends the merchant reeling. The muffled sound of leather slapping against flesh mingles with the creaking of wooden ropes on the back of a chair that has just been kicked. A fringe curiosity points out that some taverns kept small bags of sand hidden under the bar to be thrown into the eyes of opponents during fights. A dirty trick that, it is said, guaranteed quick victory to whoever mastered it. You notice. Your heart races. You feel heat rise to your cheeks as you notice bits of foam flying across the room, hitting onlookers and passers-by who now form a circle around the fighters. The proximity of the violence makes you question your reflexes. I jump into the confusion or hide behind a stack of barrels. Inside joke. If I call security today, will he understand me without a barcode? On my vest. Suddenly, the peasant grabs the merchant's collar and drags him across the table, knocking over mugs, wooden plates, and breadcrumbs. The crash of crockery and the clink of coins falling from the merchant's pocket create a sonic chaos. Historians still debate whether tavern owners turn a blind eye to these confrontations, profiting from informal fines or simply closing the door to calm tempers. After all, more trouble could mean more liquor sold after the desperation. You notice a nervous servant trying to intervene, pushing the crowd away with a rough-hewn piece of wood. The sound of wood grinding against wood echoes, and the servant lets out a hoarse scream that adds strength to the din of the brawl. A joke runs through your mind. This is the kind of bar fight even Luke Skywalker wouldn't have fought without a lightsaber. As you try to assess whether you can help, you feel a chill run down your spine when you notice a gleaming knife at the waist of one of the spectators, someone ready to turn this duel into something deadly. The metallic clink is almost an ominous invitation, and you wonder if the knife was part of his life story or just another personal protective accessory. And additional fringe curiosity claims that in some regions, it was considered dishonorable to use lethal weapons in tavern brawls, and that those injured by a blade were often banished from the community. You swallow hard and take another step back, avoiding a mug that flies toward you like an improvised projectile. The merchant suffering, frowning, contrasts with the nervous laughter of other customers who see this as bloody fun, a dark reflection of how violence was normalized in social spaces. Historians still debate whether this social tolerance for fighting was a population control mechanism or simply the result of mentalities less averse to spilling blood. Blood, as the fight reaches its climax, with punches thrown in rapid succession, an imposing local commander appears at the door, enthroned in light armor and wielding a ceremonial baton. The clang of the baton against the wooden floor makes everyone hesitate. You feel the room as if it were a single organism, relaxing in unison. Inside joke, the Crown's VIP security guard has arrived, ready to issue passports with a slap on the ear. The commander advances, issuing harsh orders and striking his baton, driving away combatants and onlookers. The metallic clang of the baton against the armor echoes, signaling the end of the dispute. You breathe a sigh of relief and watch the merchant and the peasant, now bleeding less from wounded honor than from pride, supported by servants who clean superficial cuts with cloths soaked in wine. A well-established historical fact reports that in many villages, the representative of a law maintained the authority to impose fines and even brief imprisonment on those who started tavern brawls, but almost always left a reconciliation fee instead of chains. As the commander restores order with his imposing presence, you feel the tension dissipate like smoke in the wind. The crowd murmurs words of disapproval and relief, and you smell the acrid aroma of sweat mixed with spilled wine. A gentle joke emerges, nothing like a show of slaps and bricks to increase the sense of community. You take a cautious step, avoiding a splintered piece of wood, and head to the counter where a servant offers clean mugs to anyone who wants to toast the restored peace. You raise your glass with a wry smile, feeling the slightly bitter taste of the mead mixed with the salt of your sweat. Beside you, a grumpy old man mutters, "Back in my day, we solved everything with sticks and stones, without calling the guard." You shake your head and think, at least today we have a civil guard, medieval or modern we've evolved, right? As the room regains its usual rhythm, low voices, muffled laughter, and the crackling of the fire, you realize how much the tavern is a microcosm of order and disorder, boundaries and transgressions. Every fight, no matter how violent, helps reinforce the informal rules of the place: mutual respect, paying the bill, and, above all, not trespassing on other people's property without invitation. You finish your mead with a sigh of tumultuous satisfaction, feeling the slight tingle of adrenaline still pulsing through your veins. And as the captain leaves amid looks of respect and relief, you prepare to move on, aware that that night there, tavern was not only a place for drinking and laughter, but also a stage for human dramas that stand the test of time. And yet another inside joke: every self-respecting bar needs a good fight to heat up the moment. You watch the dark glass bottle slide from hand to hand across the makeshift marble table, each risk-taker touching his neck before carefully setting it down. The liquid inside reflects the flickering candlelight as if it holds a flaming secret. When it finally reaches you, you feel the cold glass contrasting with the heat that still pulses in your chest after the last fist fight. A shiver runs through your fingers as you hold the bottle, and you bring it closer to your lips. This habit of sharing a mysterious liquor had ancient roots. Records show that as early as the 11th century, travelers brought back rare herbal elixirs from distant lands, offering doses in taverns as a sign of hospitality and trust. Historically, these bottles were sealed with colored wax to remind the taster that they were consuming something outside the common, possibly magical. And you feel as you put your lip to the neck that you are about to drink something that goes beyond mere drinking. You lean forward, Close your eyes and inhale. There are notes of anise, burnt ginger root, and a whisper of rose petals. An intense aroma that reminds you of an alchemist's potion arouses your curiosity. It is said that, in some courts, crushed walnut shells were added to speed up reactions. And curiously, the result was so spicy that it made even creaky knights think twice before swallowing. You pull your hood back further, already imagining medieval flavor engineers testing combinations in steaming cauldrons. When a liquid touches your tongue, a burst of heat spreads through your mouth, followed by tingling sensation that travels down to your stomach. Your eyelashes flutter in surprise and pleasure. Could this be the nectar that warmed war and peace in ancient taverns? Your face flushes as if the invisible flame of this liquor has been lit in your veins. Inside joke, if there was a high-octane button, this would be the medieval turbo. You swallow carefully, savoring the bitter aftertaste that mingles with a distant, almost floral sweetness. The texture is silky, so different from the wooden mug you're used to. It's like trading a thermal blanket for a velvet cloak. As you hold the bottle upright, you reflect on how this ritual of sharing was an act of trust. A simple check of character allows strangers to become accomplices in a powerful experience. A well-established historical fact tells us that in certain regions of Eastern Europe, this type of liqueur was used in ceremonies of passage, offered to the initiate before swearing allegiance to a fraternity. You almost raise the bottle as a symbol of commitment, as if you were participating in a secret fraternity rite. Historians still debate whether these fraternities had a spiritual character or whether they functioned as hidden trade networks, uniting travelers and merchants under promises of loyalty. The warmth of the liquor flares up in tiny flames that seem to dance in the pit of your stomach, and you take a deep breath, letting the echo of your sip fill the room. The muffled sound of voices continues around you, but for a moment, all you hear is your own heart, racing and mysterious. A fringe curiosity suggests that, in some cases, the mysterious liquor contained traces of wild mushrooms, psychoactive varieties that made the experience almost visionary. Some people are said to have sworn they saw winged dragons soaring over the hills. You almost imagine colors appearing before your eyes, but you keep your forehead high and decide to focus on the taste. The intensity of the elixir makes your vision tremble for a moment, and, in the dim light, you see the tinkling of the metal chains hanging on the wall, projecting silvery glints. Your mouth dries, and automatically, you tilt the bottle back to your lips, one more sip, just to confirm that it is not a figment of your imagination. You swallow and feel a slight shiver, feeling of being part of a chain of travelers who, for centuries, have risked trying the forbidden in the name of adventure. You notice the rough texture of the wood under your hand resting on the bottle, and mentally compare it to the polished tables in the royal halls. There's a contrast that brings a smile to your face. Without any polish, you could drink the same liquid as a prince, devoid of etiquette and protocol. Inside joke, not even the shiny china of the castle makes this experience any safer. Here, the hardship is part of the charm. As the burning sensation rises up your throat, you carefully cap the bottle, swirl it around, and watch the liquid in the center spin like a miniature portal. Your breathing calms down, and little by little, the heat diffuses, bringing a feeling of mild euphoria and relaxation at the same time. Your body molds itself to the chair, and the distant tinkling of a lute creates harmony with the bubbling within. A sensory concert that makes any modern playlist seem shallow. An old boatman standing nearby makes a discreet sign, indicating that you should pass the bottle on. The company is luminous. You share a brief, knowing look, knowing that no official record has documented this dangerous dose. Curiosity arises. Would the bottle continue until it was empty, or did each part of this ritual have a guardian who set limits? Historians still debate whether there were written rules for these exchanges of elixirs, or whether everything was governed by the silent honor of the participants. You pass the bottle with steady fingers, feeling its weight diminish. Only a few precious drops remain. The crowd around you resumes their conversations, but you notice that for a few moments people have gone, silent, as if the environment recognized the sacredness of that collective sip. A mischievous smile crosses your face. Who would have thought that drinking something dubious could create so much unity? As the mysterious liquor continues its journey, you take a deep breath, feeling the lingering aroma still, lingering around you. The candle flames seem brighter, as if reacting to the power of that potion. You close your eyes, mentally thank the invisible craftsman who prepared it, and let the final heat dissolve into an internal whisper. And as the vial disappears into curious hands, you take a deep breath and prepare for the next step in this night of surprises, knowing that between sips of beer, mead, and this audacious elixir, you are writing your own legend. In this ancient tavern, you slowly stand up, adjust your hood, and head for the narrow staircase at the back of the tavern, where the candlelight barely reaches the steep steps. Each step makes the wooden railing creak under your fingertips, as if it's complaining about carrying yet another stranger. The smell of musty straw mixed with the faint residue of spilled beer fills your nostrils, a rustic invitation to the makeshift refuge that awaits you above. As you climb, your heart races, not only from the effort, but from the anticipation of discovering the secret room that few travelers dare to tread. At the top, a crooked plank door creaks as it is pushed open, revealing a tiny room with a straw mattress and a threadbare blanket. It rests on uneven planks, which creak louder than the voices below, reminding you of the plank that gave way under the flying mug in the previous fight, proof that every inch of this place tells stories of those who have slept there. You enter and close the door behind you, plunging into a cozy darkness. The only window is a tiny hole through which a sliver of moonlight enters, throwing a silver streak on the dirt floor. You take a deep breath, feeling the ancient dust dance in a beam of light like absent fireflies. Inside joke, if I took a picture, I would put on a medieval night. Maximum level filter. The straw mattress squeaks under your weight as you kneel down to feel its lumpy softness. It's firm but not uncomfortable, perfect for a quick rest before resuming your adventures in the early hours. Here's a well-established historical fact. In the 12th and 13th centuries, travelers paid for their lodgings not only with coins, but often offered services like cleaning the fireplace or repairing broken furniture to reduce the cost of their stay. You smile, imagining yourself cleaning up coal ash to save half a silver coin. As you stretch out on the blanket, you smell the earthy aroma of straw mixed with a faint fragrance of herbs, thyme, and lavender, probably sprinkled by the innkeeper to ward off insects and even evil spirits. A fringe curiosity claims that in some country inns, clothes were scattered in the corners of the room to, according to local beliefs, ward off nightmares caused by witches. You frown, wondering if a handful of clothes could be the same as a noise. Canceling spray to free your mind. As you lie down, you realize that the straw mattress isn't the only inhabitant of the space. A light shuffling of paws reveals the presence of a hungry rat exploring for crumbs. But don't worry, you've dealt with sewer rodents and candle powder before, so it's nothing that a quick jump can't solve. Light joke, saved by my urban ninja signature. You lift the empty mug of mead, slam it on the floor, and the mat disappears into a crack. As your muscles sink into the straw, your ears pick up the distant clink of mugs and a muffled murmur of conversation. The wooden floor emits a soft, rhythmic creak, almost like an improvised lullaby. You close your eyes and feel the chill of a night. Medieval invade your back through the thin blanket, a reminder that this room is more traveler's shelter than castle. Sweet, amid the silence, you recall the clang of fists and the scuffle below, and imagine the commander raising his ceremonial baton, imposing order with authority. Your mind whispers, good to know a baton can do more there. Just rulebooks. Inside joke, medieval senate, one baton, and there you have it, instant democracy. Sitting on the edge of the mattress, you reach out to grab the thick cloth pillow that smells faintly of grain and dried sweat. Leaning against the cold wall, you feel protected by worn stones, as if the tavern were a cocoon of memories. and resilience. A point of debate echoes in the gloom. Historians still debate whether these back rooms were strategically planned to isolate fugitives or simply to take advantage of the building's dead spaces. This uncertainty makes every shadow in the corner seem like a shelter for unsung heroes. You stretch out your legs, feeling the weight of your hood fall across your chest, while your rough boots rest beside the bed. This small sanctuary offers an intimate glimpse into medieval life. There's no luxury, but there's plenty of authenticity. The occasional creak of the floorboards in the night wind seems to tell you secrets of past travelers, perhaps a poet who composed verses by moonlight, or a soldier who wept for home. As you settle down to sleep, your mind replays the journey, the toast to the captain, the improvised dance, the tasting of the mysterious liqueur. Each memory is a piece of this living mosaic that you lived. A surprising curiosity mentions that some innkeepers kept a rustic guest book, where notoriously noisy guests would leave their signatures in charcoal. On the wall, a record that today would be called a medieval guest book. You raise an eyebrow. If I wrote something, it would be "I will return if there are no more rats." The night chill makes you pull the blanket higher, feeling the rough fabric caress your skin. Your breathing slows as the distant crackling of the fire and the muffled murmur become the soundtrack to an impending sleep. You mutter to yourself. Even the stones here seem to whisper goodnight. In the last moments before falling asleep, your thoughts fluctuate between the precarious comfort of the straw mattress and the human warmth of the main hall, reminding you that each space in this tavern is part of a great stage of drama. And welcome. You close your eyes for good, letting your body relax and your mind dance between memories and dreams. You wake to a soft, almost imperceptible whisper, which mingles with the distant crackling of coal in the main stove. Downstairs, the hall is still plunged in a silence, and you hear only the dull echo of the servants' footsteps walking through the narrow corridors. Each groan of ancient wood sounds like an invitation to decipher nocturnal secrets, and you, compulsively curious, slowly sit down on the edge of the straw mattress, adjust your hood, and lean your body to hear better. The cold air of dawn invades the room through the tiny hole in the window, and you feel the contrast between the warmth of the blanket and a gentle shiver that runs up your spine. It's as if the medieval wind itself has something to tell, gliding through stories of travelers who passed through those icy boards. An inside joke emerges in your mind. Who would have thought that the wind would be the distant cousin of the ASMR speaker? And you smile softly, trying not to wake the mouse that you hope has migrated to another corner. Downstairs, a soft shuffle of feet echoes across the floorboards. You remember the captain who intervened in the fight. Yesterday, was he coming upstairs to check for knives left in someone's belt? Historically, innkeepers employed night watchmen to patrol the stairs and ensure the safety of high-risk guests, especially during times of riots or plague outbreaks. You imagine the watchman calibrating his ceremonial staff more carefully than the captain's sword, and you chuckle silently. Medieval security, the staff and stare combo. As your ears adjust, you catch the rustle of parchment being unrolled in the hallway. Two soft footsteps approach, the door that leads to your room, and you hold your breath for a second, wondering if whoever arrives is looking at the charcoal graffiti on the wall, those medieval guest books left by noisy guests. The door creaks discreetly, and before you have time to whisper, "Who's there?" the servant passes by carrying a tray with a piece of stale bread and a pot of fresh water. You mumble a silent thanks as he walks away, causing the boards to groan in protest. Immediately, another joke comes to mind: medieval continental breakfast, crustacean bread, and spring water. Even in a sarcastic tone, you appreciate the rustic gesture and find it amusing to think of stale bread as a low-carb superfood of yesteryear. As you set foot on the cold floor, you feel the rough soles of your boots tremble with pleasure and discomfort at the same time. You tread carefully so as not to wake the familiar mouse. You hope it gorged itself last night and decided to sleep the day away. Each step makes the floorboards creak as if to reveal stories of previous guests. Merchants who they carried contraband, illiterate monks who filled guest books with drawings of crooked crosses, and even that out of tuned troubadour who stopped here to tune his flute. You walk over to the small crack in the window and peer outside. The courtyard is bathed in cold starlight, and a few torches still flicker on the walls of the inner courtyard, casting long shadows. A black cat walks silently across, perhaps the same tavern guardian who wards off nightmares, according to fringe folklore. You smile as you imagine the feline as an unofficial night watchman, patrolling stone walls and barking or meowing orders into the darkness. Taking a deep breath, you gaze at the sparse garden of medicinal herbs just outside the back door: burnt thyme, wilted lavender, and a handful of cloves left on the doorstep to ward off witches. Remember, historians still debate whether these herbal arrangements were part of the practices of itinerant healers or just marketing ploys to attract superstitious guests. You think that if this were today, it would be featured on Instagram as a medieval botanical tour. As you return your mattress, the silence deepens and you sit cross-legged. The cadence of breathing in the room, a rustle in the blankets, the tapping of your boots against the wall, create an ASMR rhythm that soothes your thoughts. You close your eyes and, with gentle sarcasm, think if there were a medieval playlist, it would be dreams and banisters, only with soundtracks of grinding wood. Suddenly you hear a faint chirping in the rafters. Night pigeons? Bats? An amusing bit of fringe trivia suggests that some medieval travelers believed that bats brought prophetic visions when they circled overhead. You imagine a flock of bats heralding future prophets in the spice market and chuckle, remembering how much less skeptical the world was of winged creatures. As your breathing slows and your muscles relax, you recall the rats in the room, the fists in the fight, the flickering flames of the candles, the lute-playing driver, and even the whisper of conspiracies in the dark corners. Each memory formed a mosaic of sensations that now calm down in gentle waves. A sentence from an academic debate echoes in your mind. Historians still debate whether the nocturnal experience in taverns was more marked by community, welcome, or by the latent fear of betrayal and conspiracies. This uncertainty makes your heart beat in a mysterious rhythm, as if you were hearing ancient voices speaking in your ear. The cool breeze brushes the fabric against your cheek, and you feel the residual warmth of the mead still circulating in your blood, enough to keep a slight flush on your face. With a sigh of contentment, you lie back down, tucking the rough pillow under your head and pulling the blanket up to your chin. The earthy smell of straw and the faint scent of herbs create a lulling scent more effective than any chamomile tea. Before you drift off to sleep, you reflect on the peculiar rhythm of the medieval dawn, the contrast between the almost absolute silence and the faint noises that sound gigantic in the stillness. A final joke emerges. Sleeping here is like meditating with a creaking remix. You let out a suppressed laugh, and then feel your eyes gently close. The room seems to exhale a last breath of history, wrapping you in a blanket of ancestral memories. And as the silent darkness envelopes every corner, you sink into a peaceful desire to dream of stone, corridors, distant chants, and perhaps that black cat doing its lunar patrol. You awaken to the soft trail of choirs rising from the stone tunnels like a veil of light piercing the dark alcoves. The first rays of sunlight, filtering through the cracks in the tiny window, make specks of dust dance in the air, while the echo of voices in unison resounds through the corridors, a monastic melody that soothes the chest like a spiritual ball. You lift your head on the straw mattress, feeling the soft chill of the dirt floor contrast with the heat that still pulses beneath the rustic blanket. Inside joke: who would have thought that a medieval alarm clock would be a choir of monks instead of tropical? As you carefully descend the steps, the creaking of the stairs sounds like a prelude to the morning spectacle. The door opens to reveal the hall illuminated by beams of golden light, and you hear dozens of voices chanting Gregorian chants in perfect harmony. The scent of incense mingles with the aroma of freshly baked bread brought from the clay oven to the counter, inviting you to take a deep breath. A well-established historical fact: in the High Middle Ages, Benedictine abbeys organized morning choirs that reached hundreds of monks to chant lauds before sunrise, marking the beginning of the canonical day. Historians still debate whether these ceremonies had an essentially devotional purpose or whether they were also a way to demonstrate the monastery's power and wealth. Around you, the oldest regulars in the tavern, a group of travelers who spent the night there, kneel, automatically in reverence, as if those stones were a sacred pact. You follow their gesture, feeling the symbolic weight of the moment. Their voices rise in a chorus that mentions holy warriors and forgotten miracles, and you feel a pleasant shiver down your spine. It's like receiving a silent blessing before continuing your journey. Light joke, if I checked in on medieval Foursquare, I would mark Tavern Church and earn a makeshift devotee badge. As the choir reaches a higher note, you notice details in the lead singer. The improvised abbot with a simple habit with a hood that sinks down over his face, leaving only his lips exposed. He raises his hands and prays, and the nearby torch casts elongated shadows on the stone columns. A curious fact tells us that, in certain abbeys, monks trained dogs to bark at specific moments in the chant, creating unexpected counterpoints that, according to rare chronicles, represented the divine ruler. You smile when you imagine a sacred dog interrupting the coyote, a liaison with a woof woof, transforming the praise into a canine stand-up. As you walk among the makeshift wooden benches, you'll notice that the old floor has been replaced at different times, revealing patches that date back decades. This wooden mosaic is a silent testament to the frequent renovations. Historical fact reveals that, after periods of plague or conflict, innkeepers had to rebuild entire sections of the hall, mixing new and old boards without regard for symmetry. Historians still debate whether this awkward aesthetic was seen as rustic charm or simply a reflection of the scarcity of materials. The chanting grows softer, and you can make out Latin words that speak of rebirth and light. The hypnotic cadence makes your stomach growl at the tantalizing aroma of toasted rye bread and aged cheese brought in by the servants. Inside joke, nothing like morning chants to rev up the metabolism. Free heavenly breakfast. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve, remembering all the crumbs that fell onto your straw blanket yesterday. As the choir reaches its climax, the improvised abbot utters an amen that reverberates like a subdued thunderclap. The travelers rise in unison, and you follow their movement, feeling the flexibility still a little dulled by hours of improvised rest. Last night's full moon has given way to a mild sun, and the hall now displays tapestries patched by the innkeeper, depicting biblical scenes and legendary battles. You run your hand over the rough fabric and think there's nothing like a medieval upcycled quilt to give the hall sustainable style. As the choir moves off into another chapel or hallway, you never know where the wandering monks might be incarnating. In the wee hours, a young apprentice appears with a tray laden with steaming mugs of light mead and a bowl of thin, warm, company soup. You pick up a mug, feel the steam caress your face, and take your first sip, savoring floral notes and a gentle warmth that seems to envelop the entire day in an embrace. A well-established historical fact reveals that in convents and monasteries, breakfast consisted of a light liquid, often thick wine or diluted mead, so as not to disturb the penance of partial fasting before Mass. You tip the cup out of the clay bowl, spilling a few drops over the rim, a gesture of respect to the pilgrims who passed by, offering their first crumbs to the tavern's makeshift shrine. Historians still debate whether this act of pouring the last drop was a blessing or just superstitious custom to ensure safe travel. This doubt makes you frown in contemplation, as if weighing the next spoonful. As you sense the simple meal approaching, you smell the fresh herbs, thyme, sage, and garlic floating in the broth, triggering memories of modern soups and balanced diets. Light joke, medieval soup, 0 sodium, 100%. Trauma. You take a spoonful and taste the earthy, almost medicinal flavor that cleanses your palate like an internal reboot. With each sip of soup and fen mead, you contemplate the hall that now fills with light chatter, travelers discuss. Nighttime dreams. Others exchange route predictions under the bright morning light. A curious fringe fact mentions that at some pilgrimage sites, there were those who took wooden tablets to scribble prognostications and offerings to local saints, creating murals of promises and thanksgivings. You imagine a medieval digital mural of wishes being scribbled on crudely trimmed pieces of pie. As the meal progresses, an inevitable academic debate arises. Historians still debate whether these offering bowls were more influenced by local pagan practices or whether they were co-opted and transformed by the church as a way to keep pilgrims under spiritual control. This question lingers in the air, mixed with the aroma of soup and the distant echo of voices giving thanks for the morning blessing. You finish your bowl with a sigh of gratitude, wiping your mouth with a last sip of mead and watching the soft effect of the chants still resonate in your chest. The sun penetrates through the high windows, painting streaks of light on the cold walls, an invitation to move forward. You raise your hood, adjust your boots, and prepare to resume your journey beyond the walls of that tavern. But you take with you the certainty that some morning will be remembered forever. You return to the main hall, the cool wood beneath your boot soles, and a familiar scent of ale and mead still wafting through the air. The tables, now recovered from last night's mayhem, are filled with familiar faces. The burly farmer who shared the dance, the grumpy old man who soothed cuts with wine, even a makeshift abbot who led the morning choir. You receive tight hugs from your fellow travelers. Your chest warms with each squeeze, almost as if you were sharing human warmth through empty bottles. Inside joke, nothing like a medieval hug to make up for the lack of central heating. As you exchange waves and laughs, you notice the tavern keeper, sleeves rolled up, an apron stained with malt, offering you one last sip of light mead before closing for the night. You accept, feeling the sweet liquid trickle down your throat like a final note of hospitality. A well-established historical fact reveals that in many medieval taverns, the owner would offer the departing traveler the last round free, a custom that reinforced the loyalty and reputation of the establishment. You think of this gesture as the modern equivalent of a complimentary voucher, without having typed in a promotional code. As you raise your mug to toast, you notice that the torches in the stand are still flickering, casting dancing shadows that intertwine across the rails of the beams. The atmosphere exudes a cozy warmth, mixed with the restrained laughter of those who absorb the moment of farewell. Another inevitable joke arises. If there was medieval Wi-Fi, this would be the terminate, as requested signal. You let out a sigh of gratitude and wrap the barkeep in a brief hug, feeling the rough texture of his apron against your cheek. Your fingers brush the wooden edge of the table, reminding you of the old carvings and the marks of mugs that have been passed around many times. Their presence makes your heart beat at a calm rhythm, different from the adrenaline of the fights and the mystery of the dark corridors. It is a delightful contrast, controlled tension now replaced by a feeling of genuine belonging. Before you head out the door, you pass the burly farmer who holds out a rustic loaf of bread, wrapped in clean cloth as a parting gift. He whispers, "Onto the road, be sure to eat something hearty before you go." You nod in thanks and tuck the bread into your pocket, thinking that in the modern world, this would be an ideal, trail-friendly protein snack. Light joke, medieval pro tip, always keep a spare loaf of bread, protein bar style, but without the nutrition label. As you adjust your hood and gaze at the stone walls that have witnessed so many episodes, you recall the roaming rats in the room and the conspiratorial whisper in a previous section. The memory is sweet, like the last sip of mead warming your chest. You feel the cool night breeze touch your face, the same wind that, hours before, carried monastic chants, and you take a deep breath, recording every detail. A fringe curiosity completes the moment. In some regions, travelers share tavern bits in the form of wood chips or small fragments of pottery as souvenirs, believing that these will keep them lucky until their next encounter. You examine a piece of wood on the doorframe, a sliver that seems to fit perfectly in the palm of your hand, and consider taking it as a souvenir, but then shake your head, thinking that your luggage is already full of stories. As you walk down the short corridor under the low threshold, you hear the last greetings come. Back soon. Good luck on your journey. May the moon guide your steps. Each voice resounds in multi-tones, like a farewell quiet tuned by medieval hospitality. You raise your hand in farewell, feeling a pang of melancholy mixed with the euphoria of having lived it all. That final inside joke. Who needs push notifications when you have a chorus of good wishes? As the oak door creaks open, you add to your thoughts a persistent academic debate, historian still. Debate whether this farewell ritual, complete with toast and remembrance, arose from pagan traditions of passage or was adopted by the church as part of centuries-old pilgrimage rites. That question lingers like a final whisper, making you wonder how many layers of meaning lie beneath each simple gesture. You step outside, feeling the cold stone of the medieval street beneath your gently swinging hood. The full moon still watches silently, and the torches on the facade shed warm light that makes the world seem welcoming, even in the darkness. You look back one last time, watching the door close with a soft click, a dramatic closing that seals the memories. Taking a deep breath, you adjust your hood and move on, taking every scent, every embrace, every pulsing shadow into your heart. You push open the heavy oak door with the same hand that still bears a faint trace of candle wax, and a familiar creak announces your departure. The night breeze caresses your face, bringing the coolness of the outside world to contrast with the welcoming warmth you have just left behind. You step over the uneven stones of the path, each sliver of dirt telling stories of past steps. Hurrying merchants, sleepy pilgrims, wandering bards, and you feel that, in some way, you are part of this living tapestry. As you move forward, you pick up the rustic loaf of bread picked from the burly farmer, now light as the promise of sustenance, and bite into a soft, crunchy morsel between your teeth. The taste, of course, flour and a hint of salt mingles with the memory of the finished mead, creating an unexpected and comforting combination. Historians confirm that at the end of the festivities, it was common to offer supplementary food to travelers, combining plain bread with leftover cheese or salted meat. You remember the generous gesture and smile, thinking of how simplicity can sometimes be more valuable. In glittering gold, the wind picks up again, bringing a faint echo of the clinking of mugs in the distance, as if the hall were murmuring a final farewell. You tilt your head back and watch the full moon hanging in the sky, as bright and serene as when you arrived. Inside joke, yeah moon, you're still on duty, I hope you don't charge overtime. This light-hearted humor softens the farewell, reminding you that every farewell carries a hint of lightness when shared with old companions on the journey. As you walk along the sandy road, you see in the silvery light a shard of pottery lying on the tavern's threshold, perhaps part of an ancient flagon or fragment of a mead pot. You reach down and pick up the shard, feeling its cool edge against your skin. A curiosity fringe says that some travelers collected these fragments as safety amulets, believing that the shards held some of the energy of the place they visited. You put the fragment in your pocket, next to the sealed lacquer note and the imaginary rooster feather, as a reminder of the secrets you have uncovered. Your boots dig into the earth damp with recent dew, and you hear the rustle of medicinal herbs lining the path, time as a fragrant guardian and lavender whispering, reminding you of the nighttime words of a straw bedroom. Light joke, if I had a medieval Instagram, I'd make a herbal tour of the Camino story with an old sepia filter. You chuckle softly, realizing how you still carry the gentle sarcasm of your modern self. As the trail widens into rolling hills, you briefly relive the echo of morning choirs. That melody, resounding in stone tunnels, seemed to carry promises of rebirth, and now it resonates within you, defining your confidence that a consecrated historical fact relates that certain pilgrimage paths started precisely from shrine taverns, marking the beginning of journeys that united faith and curiosity. You feel this duality pulsating in every heartbeat, as if you were invited not only to walk in the physical world, but also in the landscapes of the soul. The cool breeze carries the faint scent of coal and distant smoke, perhaps the remains of firewood still burning under nearby chimneys. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly, letting each note of the medieval scent blend into the present. Final inside joke, nothing like a little smoke to validate that you just stepped out of an ancient spa. This humor serves as a counterpoint to the seriousness of the farewell, balancing emotion with lightness. As the path begins to climb a gentle slope, you notice in the distance a small red-furred fox running through a thicket. You remember the curious legend of fox couriers who delivered secret notes. Now it crosses your path, disappearing before you can contemplate its cunning gaze. You continue in silence, feeling part of a larger plot, where each element, even an invisible fox, seems to guide you. As you reach the top of the hill, the view opens onto a tranquil valley bathed in silvery moonlight and dotted with stone houses and thatched roofs. You lift the pottery shard to your eye and, for a moment, see in it a mirror of the past and the present, fragments of a history still unfolding. In the night, historians still debate whether these rural landscapes were shaped primarily by defensive needs or by the cultivation of integrated farming communities. You ponder this for a moment, struck by the quiet complexity of each grove and wall. Your chest swells with gratitude. You have walked, drank, laughed, conspired, and celebrated. And now you leave with your heart full of memories. The bread in your pocket, the sliver in your fist, and the hood raised complete your portrait as a time traveler, ready to share these future stories. You cloud your gaze with one last joke. If anyone asks where I came from, I'll say, straight from the Tavern of 1,000 Secrets. And with a satisfied sigh, you walk down the hill, taking with you now just memories, but the certainty that each step forward holds open doors to new journeys. Now, as you walk beneath the starry canopy, feel your pace gently quicken, as if the excitement and warmth of the tavern still pulses through your veins. Imagine the night wind sweeping over your shoulders, sweeping away any lingering modern anxiety and replacing it with a calm confidence. Each inhale is an invitation to let go of your worries, and each exhale is a quiet celebration of the adventure you've just had. You move forward slowly, but with purpose. Allow the distant sound of mugs and laughter to slowly fade into a soft whisper in your memory. Let the warmth of the mead and the rough touch of the planks be memories that now dissolve into peace. Feel the coolness of night herbs and dew glide over your skin, like friendly hands soothing a restless spirit. So you walk the sleeping road, knowing that every shadow is but a gentle embrace, every distant noise a welcome wave from those who share that ancestral refuge. The moon, now high, accompanies your path in compassionate silence, guardian of peaceful nights and protected dreams. As your footsteps echo softly, imagine that you are saying goodbye to an old friend with a smile on your face, and open your heart. Allow yourself to feel the lightness that only night offers, the promise of renewal, the grace of the mystery that lies beyond every bend in the road. And, in a final whisper of your own thoughts, surrender to the silence that welcomes you. May this moment be the prelude to sweet and deep dreams, lulled by the memories of a candlelit tavern filled with unfinished stories. Sleep in peace, traveler, and carry in your heart the certainty that each farewell is, in fact, just a see you soon. In a script, sweet dreams.